Yeah, the internet. How's it going, everyone? Nice seeing everyone in here today. Happy Monday. Hey, Ben. Thanks, Nathan. And yeah, thanks for having the energy to attend today. I've been pretty sick for about 3 weeks prior, so I know what it feels like. But again, nice having you back again. And to everyone attending again, it's actually quite a few new names here I'm not used to or familiar with. So hello to everyone. Thanks a lot. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. And yeah, let's kick things off for this week's analysis. Before I do jump into that, just a quick reminder that all information in today's session is provided for educational purposes only. And it's not an offer or recommendation to trade futures, stocks, options, or Forex. All right. Hopefully you guys can see my screen all right there. As always, I'll be going through the ES, the NASDAQ, the YM Russell, gold, and crude oil. For those that are new to these sessions, I do use a combination of my own market geometry techniques, as well as a little bit of price action analysis. And then also, very importantly, we look at these horizontal levels that you see over here, which we call the levels to lock. Some of these are just these blue lines, and what's this like, can't really see that orange line, and these red lines over here will be on all the markets that I cover. I'm looking at a 4-hour time frame, so a bit more of a higher time frame. Try and give you a bit of an overall picture of where I think these markets are heading. And these are just your standard pivot points that's included on the NinjaTrader platform. And then we also have our proprietary projected ranges, which is based on the previous day's volatility. So very importantly, look how price basically, where it's trading in relation to these pivot points and these projections, as well as my market geometry, price structure, etc., etc. And again, when finally that newsletter is ready one day, we'll I'll give you sort of a morning sort of brief prior to the stock market open of where I believe prices might be heading, which levels to look at, and where potentially price might find support, or where prices could move towards targets, etc., etc. Right. So first things first. All clearly seeing, you can look at the ES and NASDAQ, even the YM sort of been grinding lower, a little bit lower. Very sort of messy price action. It is also earnings seasons with the first quarter releases coming out. So maybe the market's sort of just digesting that at the moment. We haven't seen any fireworks just yet, markets going berserk to the upside or the downside for that matter. So very difficult price action to navigate at the moment. I think Coca-Cola already reported today. I think they beat estimates. The other big ones, or the notable ones this week, will be Microsoft. I think that's tomorrow. Alphabet, which is all known as Google, and Visa. So that's tomorrow. Wednesday we got Facebook, and Thursday we got Amazon. So pretty big companies reporting this week. Those are just the most notable ones I just quickly took note of. So might still see some more of this, I don't know, either sideways, grinding to the downside, or upside, but whatever the case might be, like I mentioned, not very easy to navigate. I am, however, still thinking that on the indices, I'll jump obviously a bit more on the analysis here, but on this indices that we're potentially just seeing a correction towards the downside at the moment. Just from economical calendar perspective, tomorrow we've got the consumer confidence figures coming out. It's pretty quiet for the remainder of the week. I think only Thursday we have advanced GDP quarter-on-quarter unemployment claims, and then 8:30 EST on Friday we've got core personal consumption expenditures out. So that in combination with these earnings reports, who knows what's going to happen. So I'm expecting a little bit more boring price action, if that is a way to say things, because really, like, since when was this? Beginning of April, we had this grind to the upside. I was saying that this potentially be some sort of a topping move to the upside, or potentially the end of a sequence where we potentially had this messy price action as a leading diagonal, potentially a 1, a 2, third wave to the upside, could potentially have been a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, with this sort of 5-wave move to the upside. And we might not actually be busy in the beginning stages, should I say, of potentially a larger correction to the downside. That being said, I don't know if you guys can remember from last week when we had Will on board, one of our guest speakers. We were looking at a potential area of very strong resistance, which is basically just these highs that were set here in February this year, that might still be tested. It doesn't necessarily have to do that. I'll think this could potentially be a area where price does that sort of thing, where it puts a previous high and then we get a deeper decline. So still bullish. You just have to see how things play out with these earnings reports as well. But from a market geometry perspective, we can see that price has been moving high in this channel that I've had on my charts for quite some time. Even this previous high over here before this decline we're seeing currently, price couldn't make it back up the center channel line of that same channel. Then last week, Friday, we sort of broken below it. We've retested the channel line again, and now currently price is being rejected down to the downside again. So I do expect a little bit more weakness, but by weakness, I do mean treating it currently as corrective in nature. So when this week's trading session started, price opened below today's pivot point at 4,149, found support at today's S1 at 4,138. I think if the current candle, and then it went all the way up to R1, by the way, 4,164. I think if today's or this current 4-hour candle can close below S1, we could potentially see a drop towards S2 and also our projected range low today, which is around about the 4,124, 4,125 sort of region. All right. Again, we'll recap things on Wednesday again. Just take note that we do have Microsoft and Google and Visa reporting tomorrow as well. So yeah, like I said, wish I could basically say, are we going to head lower or are we going to go up from here? But it's pretty evident to see here that it is pretty insane price action. You're making these sort of like 3-wave moves with sharp declines, immediate reversals all the way to the upside. So it could potentially be that we've seen some sort of a topping pattern here into this high that was set at the beginning of, when was this, last week, and that this now could just potentially be the first phases lower of a deeper correction. All right, so if I'm wrong, we don't move lower, then price for me at the very least have to start breaking above 4,170 to give me sort of an idea that we might have already bottomed at the end of correction, and then price potentially, gunning for that area that we've been looking at for a while to the upside, which is around about the 4,200 region, all the way to about 4,250, potentially even higher. Right, so that's the ES. Same thing on the NQ. I mean, very messy price action. If you just have to do very basic supply and demand sort of zones, or support and resistance, should I rather say, then let me just change that to green. And I think that's the same on the ES actually as well. We're sitting here in a pretty large zone that has been acting as support quite a few times. Let me just jump back to the NQ though. So very easy to see that's been acting as support. Same thing here on the NASDAQ, opened below today's pivot point, 13,060, nearly reached R1 at 13,137, and it's currently heading lower again. Also, it's been retesting this median line sloping to the upside. This red one got rejected, could potentially reach, it's not that far off actually, today's projected range low at about 12,900, what's it, 55 actually to be exact. And if we do see a break below this zone, I think sort of the bottom side would be this previous low here, sort of like at the beginning of April, 12,923. Let me just update this zone. Then we could potentially see price, and I don't think that's going to happen today. We'll obviously have to see where these levels lie at when we do things again on Wednesday, but would think that this upward sloping median line here could act as support again today, right below today's current 4-hour candle. That's around about 12,837. So yeah, difficult again, very, very messy price action, up and down, up and down, up and down. So also here, as with the ES, I'm treating this currently as corrective in nature. Then the YM, we've had a look at this pitchfork that I've drawn in here. I've had on my chart for quite some time using the 3 most prominent anchor points prior to the strong move to the upside. And we can see how well price has actually found support at this instance over here. Missed that upper, what I call a red warning line, tested it once, twice, actually made a nice little high above this area, but missed this upper red warning line and has since moved lower. And I think it was last week, YM was sort of bouncing and testing this upper median line for quite a few times. Broke below it on Friday-ish, I think it was, just, and sort of like pulled back, overthrown again. Very messy, guys. R1 currently acting as resistance at 34,014. Price potentially closing below today's pivot point at 33,911. I think if that does happen on the current 4-hour candle, we might see a retest of where these opening and closing prices were around 33,818. We also got S1 there at 33,827. And again, same sort of similar thing that we've seen on the ES and the NQ, a bit of a wide sort of support area where price has been finding support. So keep an eye on that. If that gets broken to the downside, then we'll have to just update things again and see where our next areas of support might be. Russell, as you all know, not one of my favorite markets at the moment, extremely messy as well. You know, we've had this pitchfork to the upside. Again, shift setting, you'll see I use the shift setting on the pitchfork quite often. It's typically my go-to setting on the pitchfork. You have all these areas that's been broken to the upside, but couldn't close above it. Only one instance here around about the 14th of April, retested again last week and got rejected to the downside. Also been riding this lower median line, a little bit of a close below it last week Friday, and this price is now trying to get below that. So also similar thing, we're sitting with this area of support. Where is that now? It's actually a bit further lower down. So where the price is going to reach at today, this week, whatever the case might be, maybe find support again. That's very difficult. So I am, however, over the near term, still a bit, I wouldn't say bearish, but I expect some more weakness. But as you guys can see from these charts, at any moment, you just get a snapback reversal to the upside and you're off to the races again. We're just sitting through an incredibly sort of sideways, boring time period at the moment. Right, and that brings us to gold. We've been looking at this very strong move that we've seen up in gold for quite some time. Again, if you guys can remember, that's been with us here for a while. We were tracking this symmetrical triangle that we've sort of identified around, when was this, the end of March. And that sort of worked out nicely. But then I got thrown a curveball here, and sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I've got an upward sloping channel basically there for those that are new to the analysis, especially in gold, which contained the price action to the upside really, really well. So I've measured this as a third, this as a fourth, and this is just looking at this sequence that started when was it, end of February, beginning March, as a 1, 2, 3, a 4, and potentially a 5. What I was going to say with a curveball is that price made a three-wave move higher, rather than a beautiful 5-wave sequence of what we'd expect from a 5th wave, a 3rd wave, or 1st wave, or whatever the case might be, of your impulsive motive waves. So at that stage, I was thinking that whatever this is potentially then just corrective, and that being a 5, and then this being a potential expanded flat, an A, a B, and potentially a C. The C wave, if this is an expanded flat, for my liking, hasn't really pulled back that far like they normally do. It technically has sort of reached the end of where your 4th wave ended, but I do think there could potentially be some more downside potential here. In the bigger picture, still bullish on gold, but if you measured, if this was a 5th wave where we use this high or that high, we haven't even seen a retracement to the 38.2% level, which could be anywhere from 1964. If you use this high over here to 1972, potentially a bit higher, 1973. So that's potentially an area that could still get hit. For that matter, price has still been finding support at this lower channel line. This channel has been working incredibly well as support and resistance, and every single time sort of price reached it, you get, very strong sort of reversals. Although price did sort of overshoot that area over there, that's pretty normal to see. We obviously did get this move to the downside. I think it's very important to watch the lower side of this upward sloping channel line. If that gets broken and we get a close below that, I think there's more downside potential potentially to these lower median lines. Below today's, or the current 4-hour candle, that's around 1964. Got this lower median line at around 1945-44. Whether that will be reached, no, I don't think that's going to happen today. This might have been just the end of that ABC, and we could potentially see price moving high again. I did say the same sort of thing when price hit this sort of low over here, but we have this move back to that center median line, or sorry, center channel line, a retest, and it's been acting as support again. I also overlaid a pitchfork sloping to the downside here. Even this pitchfork worked pretty well as support and resistance. So yeah, also difficult. Price been mostly below today's pivot point at, what's it, 1998-ish sort of. I think we get a close above that. I would really like to see a move back to this median, or sorry, the center channel line, to sort of give me any high confidence that a low is actually formed. Also, again, like I mentioned, still bullish on gold until potentially price breaks this channel line that's sloping to the upside. We get a close below it, then I'm going to be over the near term a little bit more bearish, but then during the following profits at noon, we'll obviously keep you updated and give you where these from a market geometry perspective, as well as our levels to lock sort of projections of where we believe gold might move towards. And then that brings us to crude oil. Even here, we've been tracking what could have been a 1, 2, a 3, a 4, a 5-wave sequence. I think this is potentially the right count for this, because we've had a very strong decline from that area. And it was sort of the end of March when the Saudis announced that they're going to reduce production. We had this, I think it was a Sunday that news came out, or Monday when the markets resumed trading, or the Sunday in the US in the afternoon. We had this big sort of gap to the upside. We'll be looking at this gap for quite some time, also in relation to the sequence to the upside. So I'm counting that as a 5, and this potentially the initial, or I wouldn't say initial, maybe let me just get that back, sorry. Very strong decline, i.e. meaning that we could potentially see something deeper like this happen at some stage, if that makes sense. The upper sort of side of where this gap occurred between the closing on that Friday is about 75.66. Let me just get the right number here, 75.63. Now that gap's not been filled just yet, and you can see that already a little bit of strength coming in. I'm treating what's ever happening here as that potential bounce. Now, whether this was the beginning phases of maybe an A, a B to follow, and then a C to downside, I do think whatever is going to happen to the upside over here, just corrected for nature, retracing this move, and then potentially finding resistance at some stage with another deeper decline to follow afterwards. So over the near term, so near to medium term, I'm still bearish on crude oil, but also treating this overall price action as a corrective in nature, if that makes sense. All right, so yeah, also had the instance where price sort of just broke above today's pivot point at 77.69, just reached R1. We sort of have a bit of confluence between our projected range high and R1 today. Right there, where I don't know if you can see the label, but 78.65-ish, and price not moving but higher. We get a break and close above these areas. I think the next sort of target area would be today's projected high deviation, 79.07, and potentially even going as high as projected high deviation, the second one deviation at 79.50. And that could potentially, you know, be where price wants to be gunning towards, which also falls a little bit in line with this median line sloping to the upside here. Been trying to actually slope a pitchfork like I did on gold to the downside here, because that's quite often what you want to do. If you think you're dealing with a correction, slope a pitchfork in the direction of that decline. I just got to change this to standard pitchfork. And we had a near miss of this low red warning line here. So potentially still be moving higher. If we do get a move to the upside, we might even be pulling back to this median line. I know there's a lot of lines on here now, where we could potentially see a lower high, lower low, lower high form, and then another decline to the downside. So whatever's happening now, I'm treating as just a bounce, if that makes sense, with potentially more downside to follow at a later stage. And that's pretty much it. I've shown here the bigger time frames, my bigger picture view of the ES. Again, still looking at this zone to the upside here, similar to what Wool had on his charts last week, where price might still be heading towards. And then I won't be surprised if this thing runs out of steam. Whether I'm correct or not, we'll obviously have to see, you know, if price gets there, gets one of those sort of instances where you get a pip above previous high and then it's a deeper decline to the downside. All right. What was a bigger picture on crude? Crude, we always obviously been tracking using a pitchfork sloping to the downside. You can even see here that price has not really reached that gap just yet, but we had this very strong move to the upside. So yeah, again, like I mentioned, and this is looking at the bigger time frame, potentially just seeing something like this with another move to the upside at a later stage, if that makes sense. That's pretty much it from the analysis side, guys. Not really, like I said, much has changed since last week. So yeah, just keep an eye on these or price action if you don't, guys, don't follow earnings or trade stocks, but these are pretty big companies reporting this week. Whether we're going to see some more sideways, I don't know. I'm going to say boring behavior, whatever the case might be. I don't know. That's anyone's guess. So yeah, that's it. I don't really have much else to say. Unless you guys have any questions for me, that'll be great. Then I'll be more than happy to answer that for you. Sure thing. Cool. Thanks, Hal. Mm, absolutely. Yeah. I hope you get well soon, buddy. Yeah, thanks everyone. See you on Wednesday. Have a good one. Goodbye.